everybody, it's your hospitality friend, Glenn. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. So one of the issues that I feel like I'm still dealing with is wondering what's going on between this bifurcation from the luxury level and every other segment in the hospitality business. You know, it was a cornerstone of what I was talking about in 2025. So I want to more investigate this a little bit more fully this year. But first, I want to thank our friends over at Actable. Actable, they give you the power to profit. Please check them out at actable.com. All right, to help us through this, got the wonderful, the incredible Suraj Bhakta, CEO, Chief Legal Officer, NewGen Advisory. How are you, Suraj?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Glenn.
All right, so I've been talking about this a lot. I've been doing keynote speeches on this particular subject, and gosh darn it, I hate being right, because I was going to say there's going to continue to be a divide, and that seems to be the case. How do you see it? What can we do about it? And I probably got 10,000 other questions for you while we're at it.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the money originally when you and I talked last year. And that divide continues to grow. I think it's been one of those things. We see the upper upscale and luxury really just separating itself from the pack. And there's a, very diminishing kind of feeling amongst the other remaining asset classes. And, it's a tough one. I think, ever since COVID, you've had, a trickle down of different things, whether the conferences never really came back in full swing and all these other things happened. But what is true is that there's a certain segment that has disposable income, and they're able to, without any, being price agnostic, so to speak, they will continue to pay for those amenities and those luxuries and that exclusiveness, so to speak, while everyone else has to continue to be very conscious about price. And that ultimately impacts the bottom line. When we talk RevPARs and things like that, that's the place that it hits. It
sure does. And look, now that we know the situation is out there, everybody, I'm talking to you out there, I want to get more in the mode of us talking about how we could kind of problem solve, how we could deal with this. Obviously, we can't just snap our fingers and make it go away. But if we're outside, that luxury class, which I know because I drove a Camry well into my 40s. So I know what that's like, right? So what can hoteliers, do you think, should be thinking about right now in order to ease that burden, as it feels like the margins are getting tighter and tighter, and having a win at the end of the day is getting harder and harder?
Yeah, look, I think, a lot of times there is a ceiling on the ADR manipulation that has been long lasting to kind of work with these things. But I think what I've seen out there in the marketplace is people, moving a little bit from the RevPAR to what they, the TPAR version of the total revenue per available room. And they start looking at other things that come into play. I'll give you a good example. There's a big push with these experiential properties, the ones where you're like close to a national park. And I think some of one of my clients told me once, he goes, I'll get a group of 4, say college students that'll go and visit my property. That's a beachside property. They'll come in one car, get one room. That's whatever, less than $100.
Sure, there's only 4 of them in there.
Yeah.
Sure.
But next thing you know, he's actually providing things like mountain bikes or the longboards that people skateboard on along the boardwalks, or he'll give surfboards, and each one is a $50 daily rental. Well, if there's 4 of them and they need 4 boards, well, all of a sudden he made $200 there versus the $100 in the room revenue. And a lot of these materials, he gets local sponsors that, a guy that might be making these longboards that says if they buy them, here's the cost, et cetera. So they've created other channels that they have to capitalize. And the cost is nothing. You're still operating through the front desk. Right. So it doesn't change that perspective. And I think those are things that are going to make a difference.
That's a great idea, because when you started talking about this, and listen, I've been preaching total customer revenue for a long time. I keep thinking about it in terms of sending people to your restaurant, but the realization is not everyone is going to have that. The vast majority of hotels are firmly in that focused service category where there aren't as much opportunities. So that's a fun, creative way. But what if you're not right next to the beach or some other awesome natural highlight?
Yeah, we've seen some other things. I think, let's talk a little, of property type, so to speak, and extended stay is still all the rage, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they've created ways to create simplicity in kind of addressing the labor cost issues that we've always had and the ease of operation. So from an owner's perspective, I will tell you that if you don't necessarily have the location that may drive some of that additional RevPAR, the other portion is finding the right type of asset. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of folks out there still hunting for these extended stay properties because it's an economy of scale in a lot of different ways.
You sure will. And check out my report with Bruce Ford, Alice Day 3, where we really talked about how the changing dynamic is really, the changing financial dynamic is making people choose to go more towards extended stay, both on the ownership side and the customer side of things. Suraj, before we wrap up, I got to know how you feeling about transactions this year with extended stay in the picture and without extended stay in the picture.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you what, I'm actually, I think if you'd asked me this question in December, I was a little bearish, but I definitely feel slightly bullish as I finish up January. We had a strong January, and I kind of look to see, I think that appetite is pretty strong. It may stay fairly muted through the first, quarter and a half, but I think the latter half of this year is really going to be a good bump for everyone. I think people will be on the move, and there's good opportunities that should be coming prime and ready.
Yeah, Suraj, I hope you're absolutely right, because since we first started talking at HOA last year, I've been super dour about everything. So I keep looking for bright spots, and I keep telling people to not trust my instinct over here. Suraj, how can we learn more about you guys over at NewGen Advisor?
Well, feel free to contact me at any time, but you can always reach out to any one of our agents. We've got agents from the West Coast to North Carolina, and happy to touch base on any of the deals. So please, go to www.newgenadv.com, and we'll be happy to help you out.
Awesome. Suraj, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And listen, guys, I appreciate all of you out there. Thanks so much. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, all of that kind of good stuff. And remember, got one life, so blaze on. And we'll be back here with another episode of No Vacancy soon enough. Bye, everybody.